Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Jared.
Morning. All right, it's 5:30. We're gonna get started. I deprecated the prior meeting invite, which you obviously got the new one because you're here. So yay, I did calendar right. Steve let me know that he's the new executive stakeholder. So I've updated the workgroup page to reflect that change. And then updates for this week in terms of deliverables. Let's see, my glasses are getting a little. There was a sync meeting last week for removing NFS from Pageants. I guess, Maren, it didn't happen.
It happened just a bit ago.
Okay.
We synced on what actions are going to be taken. So I was not aware that there is an additional epic that kind of lists all the dependencies and it kind of organized this work. So basically we agreed to have scalability take 3905 epic, which is removing the immediate blocker. And then in parallel, the release orchestration team is going to tackle the preparation for the migration investigation of all of the dependencies there. And we'll sync once we know a bit more on the progress, what timelines we are talking about.
Okay. Well, I will dive into those epics and focus specifically on the issues related to NFS, since for some of this work, for some of these epics, there's other work that is not impactful to what we want to achieve in the working group by removing NFS. So I will focus on those issues.
Yeah, so 3905 should be the one then that should immediately remove the necessity for pages, depending on.
All right, I'll focus on those. And then for the, actually I mislabeled this. This is the life traces. I spoke with Gregors today to understand that, and he's a DRI for that work. So he gave me an overview, and the same thing, I will focus on the stuff that is intended to remove NFS, because that is the real meaningful stuff for us. What is the life traces feature? So that is a question that I asked Gregors. Essentially, it's all this data that gets collected when pipelines are running. That today is being written to NFS and also to Redis, where it is stored in chunks and then put together and then put into files. So they need to do the work to alleviate some of the pressure on Redis. And there is a suspicion that we are actually missing some traces, meaning there's stuff that we may write to Redis, but not collect properly later to write to a file. So he's investigating that. But really the focus of the work is to, instead of writing to NFS, to put that in object storage and therefore remove NFS. So okay, this is super data intensive.
Yeah, is this feature misnamed? Because I think this is job output. It's not a trace, and it's in the cloud native sense of the word. Like we're not using Jaeger, we're not tracing requests through multiple services. That's what I think a trace is.
I will chase that down and see if there is some reason why it was called this way. That's what they call it in the epic, and that's what Gregor refers to, but I will chase the naming down just in case.
Okay, I see Madden nodding as well. Madden?
So basically, I don't know what's the history behind this being named live traces, but job log output has been renamed at certain point to live traces to remove the confusion with GitLab logs, I recall. So that is the reason why it was named live traces, because it's, yeah.
But Jareer, then it's just coming from the CI job, right? This is not tracing one request through multiple applications. So tracing.
That was my early confusion too. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but
I think live is really good but I think it should be live job output.
I'll chase this down and talk to the appropriate people.
Chase or trace this down, but calling it something it's not seems weird.
Okay. Yeah, let me make a note here.
Sorry, Sid, I don't understand what you're trying to. Are you confused by the name or what the actual feature does, or both?
No, I know what the feature does. Like we used to just dump that all to storage, and now we have Redis as an intermediate, so we don't have the heavy write load. No, and this feature's been around for years. Just why call it a trace? A trace, the whole meaning is that it passes multiple services, and this doesn't.
Well, theoretically, it does pass multiple services, because if you're serving a job output from a different node, at any point in time when the job output refreshes, you can get a different node serving your request.
Sure, yeah, but it's not like a trace in kind of the Jaeger cloud native sense of it. Is like, hey, you have a web request and you want a debugging output. But we're talking about the same. Of course, it has multiple. Every request in GitLab hits like the database, well, the Redis layer and Railstack and maybe a database and stuff like that. It's not about that. It's about like, where is it coming from? It's all coming from the same CI job that's emitting stuff.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the tracing aspect that adds the confusion, because it, just like you said, it made me think of Jaeger, and then I was like, I don't understand what this is. And then when Gregor told me, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes no sense. But all right, I'll figure this one out. All right, on to the next point. I will create epics and issues for all the deliverables that do not have them. Some of these may just be placeholders while I find where they're going to land and what they actually mean. I think as deliverables, they're really clear, but some of this is not slated as issues or epics. So I will take on fleshing that out this week.
And Jerry, just to clarify, you're talking about like the list of deliverables you have on the working group page, right?
The one that was added last week. I was out, but I can't remember whoever CEO Shadow was nice and took that and put it in the page. So it's just some of them already have issues and epics associated with them. I just want to make sure that all that work is being tracked somewhere. So I'll take care of creating all that and then figuring out where those things need to land across the organization. All right, Maren.
Yeah, just an FYI item that we updated a bit the GitLab Common Kubernetes Handbook page, just to give a high-level overview of what the current state is, what the current architecture is. So this is not going into details too deeply, but it should allow anyone who wants to follow what kind of moving pieces we have, they should be able to follow it. So if you have any feedback on that page, please send me a merge request with questions on what is unclear, so that I can give an update on that. All right.
Just an announcement that I'm out next Monday as well with my daughter. So I will make sure that updates for next week are ready by Friday, so they're available before the meeting. And then ask someone, hint Maren, unless he's out, to run the meeting next week. And then I thought about moving the meeting, but just aligning everybody's schedule is quite painful, and someone else is going to miss the meeting. So it just seems easier to go async and then have someone else represent me. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions or updates for the agenda?
I'm kind of joining in here, and thanks for mentioning that, Jerry. So I'm really interested in being engaged in this going forward. I was curious because you're refactoring kind of the discussion here, getting the new invites out, landed on the new work group page, I was just going to kind of ask the question: is there any scope definition left to be done, or has that really been completed in the last few meetings before this? Just kind of before we move on, are there still any questions about that, or is it really set?
I think as far as what the working group is supposed to achieve, we're really clear on that. And that came from last week. So we understand what the group is supposed to deliver. There is some fleshing out to do on some of those items, which is what I intend to do this week. Obviously, things can change, so we may end up doing some tweaks later on if we find we need to. But I think at this point, everybody's clear on what we're supposed to deliver. Are there any areas that you would like to tweak or add?
Are you asking me specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'll look through a little bit more. I mean, initially, some of my thoughts went to kind of maybe the step after this, and so I need to kind of pull myself back in and say, you know, let's iterate on things. You know, once we're able to operate multiple large sites, you know, the next things are going to be, you know, kind of initially going to be right away questions from customers about, you know, how they move from one site to another and all those sorts of things. And so there's a whole sequence of other kind of control plane issues there. But I think it's good to have this scoped into getting to that point, and then maybe there's another set of work that is, you know, distinct from that afterwards. But I still want to kind of jump into or get into more of the background on this and everything to understand more. It does seem like a good scope, but I also wanted to make sure that everyone else was good with the scope going forward, since we're at the kind of a rebirth of this particular effort. So.
Yeah, I would say probably what happens after is probably out of scope for the working group, because generally the idea is a working group is put together so we can quickly stand this new thing that the working group is supposed to be, and then this sort of gets migrated into the organization, so it just becomes something else that we as an org do. So I would imagine that there would probably not be a working group to figure out migrations and all that. But that would be either something that infra figures out, or, you know, we do some development on GitLab itself to be able to handle that, much like we move repos today through the app and all that. Yeah. But again, we'll revisit. This is going to be a long-lived working group anyway, so I expect we'll find some new and interesting things. And this is kind of like, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, Sid, I brought up the whole compliance thing, and we decided, nope, that's out of scope for this working group. Like, we're just figuring out how to stand up these things, and compliance is something separate. So.
Yep.
Cool. I don't see anyone else raising their hand, so it sounds like scope is well defined. Cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Good. There's nothing else on the agenda, so we all get 50 minutes back. Thank you, everyone, and see you. Well, I won't see you next week, but talk next week.